I started to forget that they were really nice shoes, and it's amazing how good they looked at one time. And over time, they became kind of ordinary to me. And I wonder this morning how often, I wonder if that's what happens to our perspective of God's goodness in the past. Is that we begin to, at first, when God brought us up out of the pit, we were so grateful for what God has did when God saved us and he redeemed us. And can I remind you this morning that we were on our way to hell, a place of torment for eternity. And Jesus put himself on the cross so that we would not have to suffer that torment. He pulled us up out of the pit. Some of you have testimonies of God healing you. Some people have testimonies of God doing something in their marriage. Some of us have testimonies of something that God has done in our lives. Have you ever noticed that over time, God's goodness becomes ordinary to us? We start to take what God has done for granted. You know, I've been leading worship long enough to know that that's what can happen. And my question for you this morning is, have you gotten so used to being out of the pit that you forgot what the pit felt like? And so what's extraordinary in your life becomes ordinary. You know, the new song that David talks about, he's put a new song in my mouth. That new song starts to become an old song. And we never allow God to put a new song in our mouths again. You see, David said, the same man who wrote this psalm, he said, "Oh, magnify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his holy name together." You know, when I was a kid, I used to get the magnifying glass out. I know you all know where I'm going with this. I'd burn those ants on the ground, burn army guys, burn holes through army guys, sadistic boy stuff like that. Some of you boys know what I'm talking about. Come on. What was interesting is when I used that magnifying glass and I'd magnify a rock or a piece of grass or whatever it was, notice I wasn't magically causing that thing to get bigger. I was causing my view of that thing to get bigger. And it's not that God needs to be bigger in our lives, it's that our view of him needs to become bigger. It's that when we magnify the Lord, all of a sudden he becomes bigger in our field of vision. And no longer is God's goodness and what he's done for us ordinary. It's no longer something we take for granted. And so what's the solution this morning? Focus on remembering what God has done for you. Walking in such a way that's marked by God's goodness in our lives takes constant remembering what God has done and never losing sight of it. And never taking it for granted. Never getting used to the goodness of God. Some of you are in here, you're like, well, I've been serving God my whole life. I don't remember what it was like to be in the pit. Well, guess what? Maybe it's not that we thank God for the pit. Maybe it's not that just God had saving power, but that he had keeping power for your life. And that you're creating a legacy for your children now because he's kept you your whole life. See, God was always having the Israelites consistently remember. Don't forget, it's the Lord your God who brought you through the Red Sea. Because God knew that if the Israelites could always walk and remember what God did in their past, then they would begin to trust him in the present. And so what might this look like? What are the steps that we need to take this morning to walk this out? Some really practical things. Get a gratitude list. When was the last time you thought about and you wrote what God has done? And then not only that, meditating on it. Meditating on what God has done in your prayer time. And thanking him out loud. Begin to thank him out loud. You see, Sunday morning is supposed to be an overflow of what's happening during our week. We're supposed to be at a place where we come and God's goodness has been so evident and remembered in our lives that we come Sunday and we can't help but praise him. So begin to thank him out loud. Maybe next time you're tempted to complain about your house, about your job, about your family, about your life, you stop remembering the prayer, or you start remembering the prayers that you're currently living in. The things that God has done for you. See, a heart of gratitude moves us from admiring God to begin to say, God, you're all that I am. When you have that heart of gratitude, you begin to say, that was why God said to the Israelites, remember what God has done in the past, because it's me who's going to keep you, and it's me who you get your life from, your life source. So continue to lean on me. And point number 2 is that the person whose walk has been established by the Lord has a walk that is devoted to God. Amen. So while the things that we're grateful for, that we're grateful to God for in the past, that deals with the past, but what we're devoted to God about in the present, it has to do with the present. And let's read in we're going to jump down to verse 6 through 8. It says this: sacrifice and offering you did not desire. My ears you have opened. Burnt offering and sin offering you did not require. Then I said, behold, I come. In the scroll of the book it is written of me, and I delight to do your will, O my God, and your laws written within my heart. So David begins to recall what God has done in gratitude, and then he moves into this. He moves into beginning to say that it's not sacrifice and it's not ritual that you desire, God, but it's my whole heart. It's me delighting in you. It's not just thanking God for what you've done in the past. It's me giving my heart to you in the present. And so we see a man in David writing who is devoted to God. It's what does this look like? It's a walk that says, God, you are my all in all, that Jesus paid it all, and so all to him I owe. And I desire for my life to be pleasing to you. I delight to make my life and cause my life to be something that's not just scraping by and doing the bare minimum, but it's delighting in who you are, and it's delighting to give my whole heart's devotion to you. See, it says this, it says something interesting. It's a sacrifice and offering you have not required or delighted in. It's kind of strange because God gave Israel the sacrifice system. He's talking about the sacrifice system and where they would come and they would bring an offering to God for their sins or to worship. And so sacrifice and offering wasn't something that God didn't like. It wasn't something that was wrong. But God doesn't just want us, they could come as the Israelites and they could just leave their offering at the altar and then walk away unchanged, walk away not delighting in who God is, but just giving him a sacrifice and an offering without there ever being heart change. They just come, okay, I've done my duty, I'm going home, and next time I'll come and I'll do my duty and then I'll go home and I'll remain unchanged as I go because there's no devotion. See, God doesn't just want our outward love and our ritual. He wants our whole heart. See, but you could bring that sacrifice and that offering without the heart belonging to him. You see, there's a big difference between sacrifice and delight. And is it possible that we're around the things of God so much and so long that we've mistaken being around him with giving ourselves deeply to him? I think that's where we tend to struggle with this. If we struggle with devotion to God, it's right there in the text, the sacrifice and offering you've not desired. So we do things to fill a religious activity, and we say the right things, and we're in church and we're around the community of saints, and we make sacrifices to God and lift our hands in worship. But then we never come into a place of really knowing him and being devoted to him. We do things for God to satisfy our conscience without requiring all of us. We do Christian things while underneath Our desires are scattered for other things. We like to identify with the tribe of Christianity and tell people, I'm a Christian, and those are all good things. We come to church, we worship, we do all these things, we serve at church, and those are all good things that are wonderful, and it's great to get plugged into those things. But we identify ourselves with that tribe without wholehearted surrender and intimacy. And so are we coming to church? Are we giving? Are we serving as something we do as a sacrifice, but never make the connection to intimacy and delight in our hearts, in our daily lives? Some of you might think, well, I thought we were supposed to come to church. We were supposed to serve. Yes, absolutely. But it was never meant to stop just there. We have to be careful that we don't get to a place where we just say, I just come to church because it's what I've always done. I just come to church and I sing the songs on the screen because it's what I've always done. And we lose sight of the intimacy, the delight, and falling in love with him. I'm preaching to myself because I experienced this in my own life. I grew up and I know many of you share this experience. I grew up in the Catholic Church. And my dad, he was actually a deacon in the Catholic Church. And when I was there, I got saved. And I actually came because I have great parents. And they instilled in me the idea and the concept of being saved and knowing Jesus and giving our lives to Jesus. And I started serving in church, and I played on our music team. We actually had a music team. Do you have that photo? Not this team. Okay, that was something different. Sorry. That's okay. The big music team at the church, I don't know if you have it, but anyway, I started serving at the church, and the fact was I never took it any deeper than just box checking, and I serve at the church just because I enjoy it, and I never took it any deeper than that. I got to this place where I was just checking a box and doing things and coming to church just for me and to satisfy my conscience. And my parents did a lot to get me deeper with God, but it had to be, and so it wasn't their fault, but it had to be up to me to take the next step and go the next level. And so I started, and I was in the Catholic Church. While I went away, I transferred. I did 2 years at a community school, and then I transferred to Juniata College in central Pennsylvania. And then I started looking for a church when I was there, and I never really found a church because I was like, I kind of don't really want to be Catholic anymore. I kind of want to get into something else. And so I started looking around for a church that I could get plugged into, looking for the same thing where I could just get something out of it. I could just have a ritual, and I could just get plugged in. But I was like, I didn't really like any of the churches that I was a part of. Well, then I met a Pentecostal girl named Abigail Rosenberger. And I don't know if you have that picture of us when we were in college. Maybe we'll get it up for second service. But so we were in college together, and I rededicated my life to God. See, she brought me to church. We were actually... I invited her to a dance that they had at our school, and I invited her there, and we're dancing, and I said, I'm a family, come from a big family. I'm one of 8. I'm the second oldest. Yeah, there we are. And you can throw up, do you have the Catholic picture? Yeah, there it is. So this was a team that I was a part of. You can see there I am on the drums right there. Looking good, man. And that's my brother Josh. He from 14 years old, he's a piano player, and he's an amazing piano player. And from 14 years old, he was leading this team. He has a real gift on his life. But anyway, so I'm at college, and we go to this dance, and we're dancing, and I say I have 7 brothers and sisters. And she goes, "Are you a Mormon?" And I go, "No, I'm a Christian." And she goes, "Oh, me too." See, there I was. I identified myself with the tribe, but I wasn't going to church. I didn't have any intimacy with God. But I was looking to find that again. I was looking to get back to church. So I said, "Well, what church do you go to?" She said, "I go to the Assemblies of God in town." So I said, "Let's go." It was Saturday. I said, "Let's go tomorrow." And so I figured at the very least I'd get to be with her, because it was a strong physical attraction at first, and I just wanted to be around her all the time. And but when I went to that church, I joined the worship team, man. I always had that skill, that gift on my life, and I served. I plugged in, I rededicated my life, and all of a sudden I fell in love with church. And I began to do Bible studies and skits. I got baptized all over again. I even shared from the pulpit once or twice. Not that I preached, but it was like an offering message, or I prayed or something. And so I was doing all those things. And people would even say things like, "Man, you should be a minister someday." And I'd be like, "Man, I'm in college right now for geology. I'm good where I'm at." So people would see that. They would see my religious activity. They would see things on the outward. But can I just share this for a minute? That I rarely ever got in the Word. I rarely ever got alone with God. I was doing the skits. I was doing the serving. I was talking to my pastor about God. I loved God. But I never made the connection to where Monday through Saturday he became my all in all. So what was I doing? In both cases, see, I went from just giving sacrifice and offering, and then I still continued on that progression to where I never made the leap to intimacy with God. See, what if the worship team doesn't lead us, what would our private worship life look like? If nobody ever preached to us, what would our life in the Word look like? If nobody ever called a prayer meeting, what would our life of prayer look like? See, the problem is it wasn't any of those things that I was doing were wrong. The problem was that I had begun to mistake participating in the things of God for giving myself deeply to Him. And plus I thought this too, which many of us have to really be careful not getting in the danger of. I thought, I went from where I went from this religious kind of upbringing, even though my parents did better than just raising me in religion. But I said, I go to a good church now. I go to championccenter now. And then we begin to identify ourselves with the church, but maybe we never make that leap to where it's not just about being a part of a good church. It's about being with a good God Monday through Saturday. Is there an area of our lives where God gets participation, but He does not have our whole heart? See, one of the things I thought was, I'm in college right now and I'm really busy. And eventually I'll have time. Come on, some of you know what I'm talking about. I'm just really busy. Some of us say that. We say, "Man, I'm just in a busy season right now. And Sundays are all I can give. The things that I give to God are all that I can give. And I don't have the time. I'm in a busy season and I don't have the time Monday through Saturday." See, God is not looking for us to just check boxes. And when we have that idea we're in a busy season, we think, well, ritual sacrifices and offerings like that, they're better than nothing. And that's absolutely true. But God has so much more. And you might just miss out on the greater thing that God wants to do in your life because you allowed yourself to tell yourself, I'm in a busy season, and so I can't go deeper with Him. See, David said, "You've opened my ears to hear." Are you allowing space in your life, instead of saying, I'm in a busy season, I'm going to allow God to open my ears to what He wants to do and what He wants to speak to me? and my life will be forever changed. You know what I found out also? That when you go beyond just the sacrifice and the offering, and you go into intimacy, God multiplies your time. God causes you a busy season. His grace comes upon you to where that you feel like you have a jet engine behind you because the grace of God has come on you. And you know who your God is. And you've allowed his grace to change your life. And so I was at college, and then all that changed when I graduated. So I graduate college, and I go into the oil and gas fields. And many of you know this about my story. And I went into oil and gas, and I was a geologist in the oil and gas fields. Well, I moved away to northwestern Oklahoma, and God got me into a place where I was all alone with him. He stripped away everything else. He stripped away my church. He stripped away everything that I knew, and all of a sudden it was just me and God. And it was, I felt God speak to me that I'm to go deeper. So I put all this preaching on my iPod that I had when I traveled to northwestern Oklahoma from around here. And I put just hours and hours of preaching. And I was driving and I was listening to that preaching, and man, it changed my life forever. It wasn't that I got saved, it was that my spirit got revived to the point where I was so hungry after the things of God that there was nothing that was going to separate me from the intimacy and delighting in him in my personal time. So then I began to read the word all the time. I was just in the word. When I was working those 12-hour shifts, I was in the word. I was listening to preaching. I was feeding my spirit. I was praying. I was fasting. I was doing all of these things that then I began to really know who God was. See, I could quote the scriptures before, but did I live those scriptures? Did I not just know this? I didn't just know this word anymore. I became what this word says. And that's what God desires to do in our life. That's what God did in David's life. So what might this look like? See, God is not looking for checked boxes in our relationship, nor does he want us to stop at sincere participation when he's inviting us into wholehearted devotion. And so what might this look like? Present yourself to God. David says, "Behold, I come." Where are the behold, I come moments in your week? Where are the behold, I come? I present myself to you, God, and whatever you want to speak in my life, I am all in. It might look like you realize that Sunday has been the primary place maybe you meet with God, and you decide that can't be the extent of your devotion anymore. So God invites us to a walk of devotion with him. See, the more I gave myself to God, the more I discovered who I was giving myself to. I discovered he was faithful. I discovered that he was trustworthy. And when you know who your God is, it changes the way you face what's ahead. Amen. So point number 3 is the person whose walk has been established by the Lord has a walk that is confident in God. Confident about the future that God has ahead. See, in verse 4 and 5, what does it say? Let's get back down. Blessed is the man who makes the Lord his trust and does not respect the proud, nor is such as turn aside to lies. And then it says this, many, O Lord, are your wonderful works which you have done, and your thoughts towards us cannot be recounted to you in order. If I would declare and speak of them, they'd be more than can be numbered. See, in verse 4, it says that word trust, when it says makes the Lord his trust, that word trust can mean refuge. But you know what else? It can literally mean my confidence. And verse 5, it's interesting. He said, my thoughts, the thoughts that you have towards us, it says, many are the wonderful works that you've done and your thoughts towards us. That Hebrew word can also be translated plans. And so David's looking ahead at what God is doing, and he's saying, your plans ahead are good for me. And taken together, these verses show a man in David who is exceedingly confident in who God is and what he can do. David reflects on the plans and the works of God and confidence. What is this confidence that we are to have in God? It's a courageous, hopeful outlook about the future because of who we're relying on for our security, our help, and our outcome. See, it's not just positive thinking or good vibes. Sometimes we get that idea. We just need to have good vibes and positive thinking. Well, you know what? You could get revived by watching Mr. Rogers. And just like I said, you could get revived. It was just positive thinking. Your spiritual life could be filled up just by watching Dora the Explorer. You know what I'm saying? So it's not that. It's an assurance based on the character of Almighty God. That in the place of prayer, you discover this is not just what my God has done for me in the past. It's who he is, and he can be trusted. I do this thing with my kids. It's called, I used to do it. They move their bunk beds to where the ceiling is too low. I did this thing with them. We call it CatchBot. And I pretend that I'm this robot, and they go to the second bunk of the bed, and they jump off into my arms. But it's all these, I move my arms differently based on what they want. Sometimes I'll do and they have to like time their jump so it lands right in my arm. I'll do like one of these, right? And they have to, it's like an obstacle course, and they have to time that jump right into my arms. And they love it, man. And they've done it enough with me to know. See, it's interesting. When we say, want to play CatchBot? They're like, yes. They're confident. Why? Because they know my character well enough to know I'm not going to drop them. They can trust that when they jump into my arms, they have a track record enough and they know my character enough to know Daddy is not going to let us fall on the ground. And so our confidence, see, why do we struggle with that principle of saying, I know Daddy's not going to drop me? I think our confidence is profoundly affected by where we place our trust. It says this, blessed is the man who makes the Lord his trust. Watch, it shows us the answers. Here's where we struggle. Who does not respect the proud, nor as such turn aside to lies. What does it mean when we turn to? It means in our walk, we turn, instead of getting our eyes on the one who delivered us from the pit, the one who would never drop us, we look towards lesser things to be our security. We look towards lesser things, and that looking towards lesser things causes our confidence in our mind to wane and wax. And this can be our money and our career. I need to make sure, man, I'm stable so that my future can be stable. Or maybe it's our family. As long as my family's okay, then I will be okay. Maybe it's the economy. You look at those gas prices, you look at what the stocks are doing, you look at the groceries, and you begin to think, man, I don't know how I'm going to make it. And you look at that and it shakes your confidence for the future. Here's another big one. Politics in the news. We have an election coming up this year. What does it look like? Is your confidence that something is going to happen and your life will be changed and everything will change for you? Is your confidence going to go up and down with that election, or is your confidence in the one who never changes, who always holds office? See, none of these things are bad. None of these things, they're all important, but if they occupy the center of our support, the confidence of our walk will go up and down with them. Then when those things are up, we're up. When those things are down, we're down. Can I encourage you this morning? He's Jesus Christ, the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's God who never changes, never leaves us, never forsakes us. Amen. See, we can put our trust in other things and jump towards other things that can leave us, when the support goes away, can leave us at a place where we don't want to take risks. We won't want to step into all that God has for us because we're just not confident, because we have our trust and our eyes on the wrong things. It says, many go astray. One of our biggest falsehoods, by the way, that we go astray on, I think, is our own strength. We trust our own strength over the strength of our dad who will never stop us. See, have you ever felt, come on, be really honest with me. Have you ever felt this before? The more I worry about tomorrow, the more I will control tomorrow. See, there's a fine line between preparation. I'm not saying you shouldn't prepare. Those who prepare to fail, or fail to prepare to fail. We've all heard that. But there's a fine line between preparation and worry. See, preparation is fine, but it never can be at the expense of our soul. And can I just be real vulnerable with you this morning? This has been me before. This is an area that I'm preaching to myself with. One time I was planning to minister, and I got so caught up in my own strength. And God, I need to do this, and I need to figure this out, and I need to get this all right, that it took such a profound toll on my soul that I couldn't even keep sight of God anymore. And sometimes we feel like God is far away, but I think sometimes we do that to ourselves through our own worry and our own reliance on our own strength. To the point where our soul can no longer see God, doesn't have that connection with God anymore. Our trust was in our own strength over who God was. See, preparation wasn't my problem. If I ever struggle with that, it's not that preparation is my problem. It's that I'm asking preparation to give me the peace that only God can give me. That's right. And so you have to watch, where am I getting my peace from? See, what's the solution this morning? We need to anchor in God's character and who we know that Daddy will never let us hit the ground. He's never going to let us down. See, it wasn't that my kids... It wasn't that when the kids jump into my arms, it wasn't like I could prevent them from ever getting hurt. But guess what? When they leaned on me, I was never going to let them down. And so you take your weight off lesser things and onto the character of God and say, I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I know who holds tomorrow. Amen. The worship team can come this morning. So what might this look like in our lives? How do we walk this way in our lives, a place of trust in God? When you see those bills, maybe you remind yourself, God has been faithful. Maybe when you get that email that you didn't want to see, before you start building in your head the next 6 months and what that looks like. Come on, somebody. Like, I'm there. You say, God is already in the tomorrow that I'm so afraid of. When you see the price at the gas pump, you begin to remind yourself, my God is on a different economy. And I'm not relying on the economy and the things of this world to give me my sense of peace. When you see the results of the election this fall, instead of being swayed by that, you think, I'm a citizen of heaven first and America second. See, it doesn't mean that we're never going to feel fear. It just means that fear doesn't get to choose where you turn next. And so here's what I'll close with. How have you been walking your first half of 2026? Is there something that God has done that you need to remember again? Is there an area where we've mistaken participating in the things of God for deeply giving ourselves to Him? Is there something we've been trusting in that was never meant to hold your confidence in the first place? So you can tell a lot about somebody by the way they walk. And do people in our lives see the glory of God because of how we walk? So my prayer for us today would be simple, that God would, by His Spirit, help us to walk this way.